You're done. I'm done. Wait. It is windy today, you can tell, huh?
Mm-hmm. It's backwards too.
All right.
People are already connecting.
Everybody is early. I love it. Let me do this. There's Deb. There's Gus and Cindy.
Paul.
And Paul. And Dan is by himself. This is awesome.
I messed up your recipe, Kathy.
Do what?
I messed up your recipe.
Oh, Paul.
Oh, why? What'd you do?
I forgot the Parmesan cheese. I had to sprinkle it on at the last minute.
That's okay. It all ends up together in your same place.
Hi, Julie. So, all right. Well, welcome. I love it. We've got the early crowd now. It's not even 5.
It's the pre-drinkers.
Cheers to the on time people. We've got, all righty. So,
Okay,
oh, we got more mushrooms.
mushrooms are coming. All right.
I love it.
Now can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes. All right.
Mike, do you know who I am?
Oh, we can't see you.
Are you sure?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I'm Gus's crazy friend. I can't seem to get.
Oh, Mike Leiter.
Oh, hi, nice to see you. Log out and log back in with your audio, I think is how you get it.
Okay, Carrie, can you hear me now?
Yes, I can.
Okay, cool. I did it.
You did do it.
Jonathan.
Yeah. Hey, Becky, did you make the mushrooms?
No, I don't like mushrooms.
Oh, boo.
I made some, but I didn't follow your recipe, Kathy.
That's okay. It's okay.
So we'll have hummus instead.
That's what I did. I used hummus and Parmesan and parsley.
Hey, there's lots of ways to make the mushrooms.
There are lots of ways to make mushrooms.
It's so funny. I've been thinking about your eggplant caviar lately. I want to make some of that.
That's the recipe Mom was talking about for next week, but we just
Really?
didn't. So we're gonna have to take a straw poll of what.
On the eggplant caviar.
Yeah.
My sunglasses on because I'm on the deck and it's really bright. So I'm going to put my glasses back on.
There you go. You look good. And Marshall, it's nice to see you. Hi, John. Do you guys know how to unmute yourselves?
Hey, guys.
If you hit the space bar, you unmute yourself. And then if you hit the space bar again, you mute yourself. So if you want to have side conversations, mute yourselves. We're gonna ask you guys. There you go, Marshall. I unmuted you.
Okay.
Now I can hear you. We're gonna make you chime in and talk. FYI. So.
Hello, Gus.
He was on. Oh, he's not on video though.
Hey, Gus.
Hey.
It's Julie.
All right. Well, it looks like we've got a pretty good crew now. It's 11:05.
Yeah.
Does everybody have Carriage House? Except for Gus, we know he's drinking scotch.
Oh, there's Carriage House. Where's that?
Excellent. Cheers, everybody. Cheers.
We got Carriage House and mushrooms.
There, you guys are winning the happy hour. I love it.
Yeah, mushrooms coming out.
So, because I know there were some questions. June, what vintage are you drinking?
This is
Yes. So, with the 2013.
You went with the 13? All right.
Yeah.
Excellent. And Barb, did you find one, or did you have to go pick up the 14?
One lowly bottle.
Oh.
Found it.
What year?
I think it's a 12.
We can.
All right.
We can.
We're 2011.
No.
Oh,
Yeah.
perfect.
Ah.
Honey, I know you don't have the latest and greatest. What vintage do you have?
Okay.
I have the 2010.
Oh,
Yeah.
Nice.
I thought there was.
All right.
Greg gave me a 2011.
We have all sorts
We
of
can
different
just do a
vintages.
vertical.
I love it.
Did Hugh get banished to another room?
Huh, Mom or Dad? Yeah, Dad's at home.
Yeah, I just saw him.
Oh, he is at the office. Good point. I don't let him here. Social distancing. You can't let Dad too close. So, we wanted to take the opportunity. We'll come back and look at all of the, actually, I should ask the question first. Marshall, what are you drinking? And then John, what are you drinking? Because I doubt
I'm drinking some Plain Cellars caps off from Red Mountain from our Shaw 32 vineyard.
Nice. So
Yeah.
for those of you guys that don't know Marshall, he grows grapes on Red Mountain at Shaw Vineyard. And John, what are you drinking?
Hey guys, I dug into the cellar and found an old Nebbiolo from Cavatappi, and two. So
Nice.
Julia was Mike's wife.
Yeah.
So Carrie, where is Red Mountain?
So Red Mountain, well, the Yakima Valley goes from Red Willow on the west, which is where John grows grapes, and it goes all the way, Sunnyside's in the middle of the valley, and Red Mountain is right before you get to the Tri-Cities on the east side of the valley. And
Okay.
we are going to be doing more of a deep dive into, this is more of a vineyard winemaker happy hour. We're going to do some virtual vineyard tours where we go around the Yakima Valley and talk about what's cool about the valley and all the different grapes that we grow. And
Is that coming up like on Wednesday nights, or is that going to be different days?
It's going to be a different day.
Oh, I love it. I can't wait.
Yeah. And it's, I mean, you guys apparently like listening to me talk, which is amazing sometimes. But I love listening to John and Marshall, so you're going to want to come listen to them as well. And perspectives are different, but everybody knows what they're doing, and it'll be super fun. So we wanted to talk about Carriage House, and I forgot to open my picture of the vineyard so we can start back at where in the vineyard these grapes come from. But the cool thing about Carriage House is that this was the first wine, the first label that Côte Bonneville produced back in 2001 when we started the winery. And so because this was a while ago, I thought it's kind of fun to look back at why did we make Carriage House? Why did we start Côte Bonneville? What did the industry look like? If we think back about what the industry looked like a month ago, it was different, or 2 months ago, it was totally different. If you look back at what the industry looked like 15 years ago, or almost 20 years ago, it was really, really a different scenario. So I thought I'd let Mom tell you a little bit about where Carriage House came from.
Okay, so as we mentioned, we started the vineyard in 1992, and we always would taste our wines in barrels with other winemakers, and it became apparent that our wines were distinctive. They really expressed the site. So in 2001, when our last child left home, and we got empty nest syndrome, because what do you do? Some people travel and pick their feet up. We dive in and do another business. So we decided to start an estate winery, and our goal was to, if you think about that time, Washington was kind of an unknown area. We knew about it, but nobody outside of the state knew about it. So, and that was because a lot of people didn't really sell outside of the state. But we wanted to really show that Washington belonged with the best of the best and was a world-class wine growing region, and we belonged up there with the top dogs. That was a lofty goal for a little bitty winery, but that was how we thought. So we started, the vineyard's named De Brule after Hugh's mother's maiden name. And then when we started the winery, we didn't want to name it De Brule because people vineyard designated our wines. So we looked at each other and we said, well, it has to be Côte Bonneville. And our logo for our business card for the vineyard for years had the image of the cornerstone of Côte Bonneville.
I have one.
which if you've pulled a cork out of our bottle, you see
I don't know
that.
if they
and
can
you
see me.
don't know our bottles. So it tied into what we were doing.
Because right now I'm
So
blank.
we decided that we wanted our labels to reflect the estate. So this
Well, I
carriage
barely-
house was on the estate property,
I tried.
and it in the 18th.
Anybody hear me?
Yeah. Oh, Bonnet, yeah, you got there's the cork down there. It's got it. So the Bonneville was built in 1902, but the carriage house was in place in the late 1800s. It was a working carriage house. It is actually built in a hillside. So if you looked at the other side of it, the horses were kept below, and the feed area and the groomsmen lived on the top level. Well, when Hugh and I were married, we were married in the carriage house. It was a chapel at the time, and so that label's kind of we thought it was pretty cool. We had a great connection to it.
I don't know if
We
they've
wanted
got
to have a car on the label because
if I have a
carriage
camera.
house, and we thought that was kind of cool. So we were the car that we had wanted. They told us they'd sue us, so we couldn't use that. So our attorney said to use an out of production car. So we wound up with a 1935 Pierce Arrow limousine in front of the carriage house. It's also on our Bonneville label. That car is one Concours Elegance. It's a beautiful car, and
I don't think I'm there.
it's so that's sort of the history of that label.
Yeah. And then the history of the wine, because we planted the vineyard in we started the winery in 2001.
Mm-hmm.
We planted the vineyard in 1992. So we'd been selling fruit to a lot of different people. So the concept of how do you put together this wine is really kind of a good starting point for a lot of the questions we still get. And like Dan was emailing yesterday, I think it was, or I read it yesterday, about, how do winemakers make decisions that they do? And how do you decide what barrels to use? Like we were talking about last week. How do you decide how to put your blends together? How do you decide what yeast choices? Do you do the native ferments? Do you do inoculated cultured yeast? How long in oak? What kind of tree? How do you make all these myriad of decisions that you have to make, including, just like, what's your fermentation kinetics? Do you do warm ferments? Do you do cold ferments? Do you do them in stainless? Do you do them in small fermenters, big fermenters? How big is your production? Like, all of those things are predicated based on what you're trying to accomplish, or should be. It makes it easier if you are trying to accomplish something. And so one of the things, when Mom and Dad started out, they wanted to make world-class wines that were very classic and traditionally styled. So if we go back to the picture of the vineyard, that makes this easier. So we'll go back to our picture of the vineyard that we look at every week. Mm-hmm. And Carriage House comes from this planting down here. And we said last week that the rosé were these rows 11 to 20, counting in the Franc. And then the next section goes over into Carriage House, and the Cabernet that's adjacent to it goes into Carriage House. And the interesting thing about this planting down in this triangle versus the planting that goes up the hillside is those have completely different geology. They have the vines are different, the heat accumulation is different. It's actually really, I was up there today, and there's bud break in the Cabernet on the hillside, but there's not bud break yet in the Cabernet that goes into Côte. There's not in the part of the vineyard that goes into Carriage House. So the vines respond differently, they grow differently, they're functionally experiencing different vintages because of the different temperature profiles all the time. So by making those two things, the Carriage House from that one block, it's very site specific down to that one block. So the expression of a sense of place was something that was very important to us from the beginning. And then, and that's where a lot of, that's where a lot of the decisions along the way come from. Also in that we're very classically styled. And one of the things that it means is we've grown from just doing Carriage House and Côte from the hillside is a lot of times people say, do you put Cab Merlot in your Syrah? Do you blend those three things together in the coat wines? And part of the reason the answer is no is because even though they're all from the same vineyard, classically you wouldn't put, I mean, you can't put Cab Merlot and Syrah in a blend and say we grow some of the best Cabernet in the world, because you can't benchmark it to anything. There's nobody, I mean, you can't say we grow Cabernet that's equivalent in quality to Bordeaux or Napa if it's got Syrah in it. I mean, there's no way to do an equal comparison. And so one of the things Mom and Dad wanted to do, as Mom was saying, is have those wines that we could say, no, we grow really great grapes here. You can do those apples to apples comparisons.
I think the other thing that's important is you have to realize that the industry in those days, the Yakima Valley is where this all started. And this is where the research has been done. This is where we've learned about canopy management, trellising, water needs, irrigation, integrated pest management, all of those things. This is the area that started. Yakima Valley provides fruit to the majority of wineries throughout the state. That had been the pattern. Most people did not make estate wines in those days. They would make, some winemakers would make vineyard designates that came in the late 90s, maybe before with you, Jonathan. But, you know, that was kind of that wasn't the norm like today. So for us as an estate winery, and most of our customers that we sold fruit to were making varietals, Cabernets, Merlots. It made sense for us, we felt, to do more of the estate, old world, classic style.
Mm-hmm.
Kathy, were you and Hugh wine snobs, no offense, before you moved to Sunnyside, or like did you kind of just get to the area and figure it out as you went?
Well, let's just say we were in California in the 70s. And so I think we kind of caught the bug there, and he was probably more of a wine snob than I was,
Which is totally backwards now.
But I followed along.
This is why Dad's muted this week.
No, it's just because he can't figure out how to unmute himself.
I know. Wonderful.
So yes, we did.
I can remember visiting them in Memphis when Hugh was in medical school, and the only wine I could buy to go over and visit their house was Chablis. This guy said he had some Chablis.
Okay, you're getting muted too.
Yep, you're muted too. So, I mean, one of the cool things about the early days of the wine industry is that because, I mean, it was so small and everybody so knew each other, I mean, all of the people who were doing all of the research, I was supposed to be on a panel for where the history of the industry for Taste Washington, and I went back and Mom pulled out a book that Walt Clore had written about the beginning of the wine industry, and on page 3, there's a picture of when he had gone to do a tasting at WSU at IRAC in Prosser, the Irrigated Ag Research Center, and I'm looking at the picture going, oh, I know all these people. I worked with Sarah and I worked with them, and you know, when I made wine in 7th grade, it wasn't that I just decided to drink wine. It was, I mean, they always drank wine. So, I mean,
You did a paper on resveratrol, right?
Which was in the news again last week. Did you see that?
No.
Oh yeah,
I remember you talking about that.
Well, last week they came out with another paper, because you're right. And they came up with another paper that it is now supposed to be good for preventing dementia.
Yes, and
Cheers.
So now wine not only makes you healthier, it makes you smarter.
we knew that.
Drink out for sure then.
So yeah, when we talk about the, you know, how we make all these parts of the vineyard, I got into the, I mentioned that things are going through bud, break, and bloom a little differently. And I know Dad we're going to unmute you, Dad, so get ready. I know Dad wanted to talk a little bit about what's going on in the vineyard right now because, and Brianna, I'm glad you're here, since she's been asking me every week, what's going on in the vineyard? What's going on in the vineyard? What's going on in the vineyard? And nothing's been happening in the vineyard until now. Stuff is happening in the vineyard, and it's happening quickly. So for our vineyard update, number 1, starting at DeBrule, Dad, you are unmuted, and I have your pictures. So
we had questions about what's going on in the vineyard, and I had started taking some pictures before last week's happy hour, and so I thought, well, maybe I can pick one vine that will illustrate for people to see the progression from the bud swell, which was April the 8th, and then you start to see bud break, and then
April 6th was bud swell. You can
April 6th.
And I can only show one at a time, or that's all I know how to share at one time. So
Okay.
go to the 10th.
And so then the buds, when you start to see the pink, then you know things are picking up. This is an exciting time in the vineyard. Marshall and Jonathan will reaffirm that, because this is when the winter's over. It's a really cool time of year. So then the next one.
The next one is the 13th.
So forgive the background, but you can see there's a lot more pink. The buds have opened up, and there's stuff happening, and not just with this particular vine, but with all the varietals. They all seem to be popping at once. Our consultants yesterday said that our cab is moving along at a very rapid rate. They were surprised how the cab is coming along like this. And then there's another picture from today. And there you can see in a matter of, 10 days, how things change. And then we start measuring the shoot length at each of those sites. And one of the things you'll notice is there are a whole lot of buds there. There's a lot of vigor. That's a carryover from last year. The buds are set in June the previous year, and we had a real wet spring last year, and so it put vigor into the vines. And so there'll be a lot of shoot thinning that our ladies will do as we go along to deal with it. The other thing that doesn't show really well on this is regeneration places. There are buds that are not on shoots that are coming out of the vine itself. And
I have that photo. Give me one sec.
Next year.
Give me one sec. I have that photo. I just have to figure out where it is. So keep talking, but talk slower.
Okay. So it's an exciting time, and the vineyard is very happy. It's a couple days behind. Oh, okay. So there you see coming out of the trunk itself, out of the cordon, those little pink buds that are not off of the shoot that we've pruned. And so those are what's going to be for next year. And the ladies will save those shoots so that we don't keep getting away from the cordon.
All right. Do you guys have any questions about what Dad said?
Let me just clarify that for people getting away from the cordon. You're trying to, what he means by that is you're trying to keep your fruit zone closer to the cordon, whereas if you keep pruning back to 2 buds on those kinds of spurs, your fruit is going to be higher, and it's going to be up off the cordon and higher in the trellis. So you don't want it there. You want it lower. So you're trying to develop those regenerated shoots for the following years, so that you're keeping your fruit zone by that cordon. Does that make sense?
So the cordon, for those of you that aren't familiar with, that's the stuff that's got bark on it. And
thank you for clarifying that.
I like Paul's background.
I do have a question. So when you talk about bud swell and it's pink, so the grapes don't flower right now like a magnolia. They flower later on in the spring?
Well, what happens where those pink buds are, shoots will develop from those buds. And when they get up to a certain length, and the timing will be the first week of June in our vineyard, when you'll start to see the bloom. And you'll see once the bloom of that, as we continue with this series through the months, it appears, of COVID, we'll be able to track that stuff. I'll take more pictures and different varietals. And when the bloom occurs, you can see actually if you cut one of those blooms, you can see the baby cluster of grapes that's inside it.
Oh.
So it's super cool.
I
But
love
the big thing about bud break and what's happening right now is that the vineyard is coming to life in the farming season. We've been working like crazy to get ready for this moment, and now we're into the next phase of growing the grapes for you.
Very exciting.
All right, so Barb, yes?
So what is the reference? I was working on my write-up this last week, and the reference was flat leaves. Is that when the leaves kind of come out? Flat leaves?
I'm gonna let Marshall take that one. Oh, wait, sorry. Go ahead, Marshall.
I'm not even sure what flat leaf is, but it could be when you start to see what he was talking about with the red showing. We call that red tip as soon as you start to see the red tip of it out there. But I'm not sure what the flat leaf, I guess, would be called. Maybe Jonathan knows. If not, come on, Jonathan, speak up.
He's muted. Ask Wikipedia's.
Figured out my mute button. So, I don't know. It sounds about right, Barbara. Probably when it's open.
Leaves kind of, because I went out to the vineyard after that to take pictures, and they had a lot that were kind of exposed, and that was my assumption.
Yeah.
All right. So what are you guys seeing Marshall, you're probably ahead of us a little bit.
Not that much. I mean, it's surprising when I was just seeing the pictures. We're not that far ahead of you. Our Cabernet is still, even on Red Mountain, is just barely starting to see some bud break right now. So Merlot is starting to open up. We're hoping we've got crews coming back tomorrow, and we're hoping on Monday that we can probably start shoot thinning. Probably Merlot first, actually, but
wow.
We're going to be close enough. We've got so much to get over that we've got to really start early. So we're hoping to be able to see the clusters. But yeah, this is exciting. Like he said, this is a fun time in the vineyard right now when you see what happens after your pruning is over and you're waiting and waiting. And it seems like, I thought we were going to have such an early bud break, and you guys probably too, just the way the spring started, but boy, it's just been so slow. It just seems like we've just been going on and on for this bud break. But I would have thought, honestly, 2 weeks ago, I thought I would see bud break. But
yeah, I agree, Marshall. It seemed like it should have been earlier. But my dad would always say, bud break is the average bud break is tax time. So about April 15th,
then you're gonna have to wait till July.
We're probably about a day or two after that, right at this point. So I think we're just a little behind your pictures. But everything's waking up, and kind of nice to see it go from this kind of bleak, like looked like a dead vine, to just waking up and blooming. So it's exciting.
Yep. And it seems like too, when we have later, like a what seems to me to be later, not a little bit later bud break than when we've seen bud break in March. Usually Red Mountain, if we've got a warmer spring starts earlier, it seems like Red Mountain warms up sooner, and I see it earlier there. But when we have like more of a, I guess call a normal year, like right now, it seems like it's even across everything. Our vineyards on Horse Heaven, our vineyards in Mattawa, everything is kind of on the same, Chardonnay's opening up right now, our Merlot, Merlot on Horse Heaven. Like I said, our Cabernet is just starting to, but it's a little bit behind, but that's kind of normal. But it seems that seems to me that it's more even across the state when it seems like when it's more of a normal year.
Mm-hmm.
Does this week's effect on that?
Oh, you do have one.
Yeah.
Sorry, what was the question?
Does this week's freezing have any effect on that bud break? Where we had freezing earlier this week.
Oh, well, the nice thing was because it was really cold at night, we didn't like we didn't have much going on at all. It was kind of like not a lot, not a lot, not a lot. And it was cold. And then all of a sudden when it got warm up into the 60s and 70s, everything went poof. And I mean, that's why in the pictures Dad showed, there's more change in the last 3 days than there was in the previous week.
And most of us are up on hillsides where it's warmer and you get that air flowing, which really protects you. If you're planted down low in the valley, you know, I don't know what are the grapes susceptible to now, but
it's why we don't have Concords, or we have Concords at the winery, because if we had wine grapes where the winery is, they wouldn't make it. But I mean, the difference between the winery and the vineyard, it's 5 miles, but the elevation change is really big, and it's
huge.
It's yeah, and that's why we all grow grapes on hillsides. And before, like in the early days of the industry, before we really understood how important it was to be up high, there were a lot more vineyards in a lot of marginal sites. And over time, the vineyards in the Yakima Valley have migrated up higher on the hillsides. They've migrated to better sites. We've learned how to grow them more. And as such, the quality of the grapes coming out of the Yakima Valley just gets better and better. And I mean, that was one of the other things that we were talking about with all the changes that have gone along as the industry's evolved since 2001.
About irrigation.
I mean, we were some of the early studies on drip irrigation. We did a lot of studies on canopy management, how much, how much sunlight do you need? How much crop should we carry? A lot of those things were done that research was done in conjunction in our vineyard. Because when we switched to drip irrigation, like nobody knew if drip irrigation was going to be the right choice. Mm-hmm. And in this area, it's a pretty important resource. I mean, it's good. We can give the water where you want it. We control our weeds that way. You can really control vigor by how much you give. We can micromanage with water. And in short water years, we can really utilize our resources so much more effectively with drip irrigation. But that's all pretty, I mean, that's pretty new in the grand scheme of things. Glad you like the mushrooms. That's fantastic. And then Trish wanted to know more about irrigation practices in general. Oh, and when do we start irrigating? So what we're doing now is, I kind of have to laugh because last year we had so much snow in February that I remember we had a lot of conversations about the water at this point in the season. And the fact that we had all that moisture last year, and then this year we had a much more normal year, and we went into the season with not a lot of moisture. The soil profile is dry. Now that is one of the single most important things I think about the Yakima Valley, because you want to do deficit irrigation and stress your vines at the beginning of the season when everything's growing, not at the end. So even if it's dry in most other irrigated regions like Napa, it's dry during the growing season, but they get so much more water and moisture than we do in the winter that they go into the season with their soil profiles already full. And one of the things we talked about at Davis was, how do you get rid of all that water? What do you plant with cover crops to pull all that water out? One of the things that you do down there is you try to compete with your vines. And up here, we are adding water now. We're irrigating because the soil profile is so dry. We're trying to get it rehydrated so that the plant's ready to go for the season. And then we'll water throughout as the vines are growing. They obviously need water, and then the more water you give them, we water on a schedule. Marshall, I should ask you what you're doing. Are you doing any satellite? You're probably doing satellite water imagery or much more. He's got a lot more toys in terms of soil moisture probes than we do.
We've got some moisture probes, yeah. So I've got some moisture probes, but we're doing just like you, Carrie. Right now, I mean, that's what we do. You know, last year coming in with all the snow and the moisture we had, it's 2 years of my 27 years of doing this, we didn't have to water up, and last year was one of them that we didn't put any spring water on because the soil profile was full. And so right now we've watered up pretty much not completely to full, but to make sure that that when we get bud break, that everything's going to be pretty happy when it starts to grow. And then we'll start monitoring it. But that is unique about us here, where with the drip irrigation, that we can control those canopies, and we can control how much water we put in. Where, you know, we live in the desert, we average 7 inches of rainfall here, so a year. And so it's fantastic that the way that the vines will react with the drip irrigation. But we're watering everything up right now too. In fact, we've got all of our stuff watered up already right now.
Very close to Yakima. Yeah.
Yeah, so then we'll water, since Dritch talked about irrigation practices in general, and Bill asked about the temperature. As Mike was saying, it was really cold earlier in the week. We had some pretty cold nights down on the valley floor. It was freezing, probably, or close to it. Did it freeze at your house?
Yeah.
Okay. I live on the hill, so it didn't frost at my house, but it frosted at their house. And then it's, I mean, what is it? 70 degrees today. It's really warm. I mean, the wind's blowing, but it's gotten, hopefully, now we're sunny and beautiful and perfect growing weather for, you know, until September. That would be ideal. That'd be normal since we're all in a normal. The nice thing is the grapevines think it's a normal year, even if, you know, the news doesn't. But so we'll water, we're on a weekly schedule. We'll go through and evaluate what the vines need, and we'll watch how they're growing and give the plants the water they need through till veraison in August. And then after those berries turn purple, the berry size is set, the canopy's not growing too much anymore. So then we'll be in a more maintenance mode of watering. We'll keep everything healthy and growing and vibrant through until all of the winemakers decide they want to, through the rest of the season, and the winemakers all decide they want to harvest their grapes. It happens at different times in our vineyard, because I only get to pick my grape, or decide the picking decisions on my grapes, and the other winemakers get to make their own picking decisions. So we have a lot of questions today. I'm having trouble keeping up with this. I love it. So the soil profiles, we should talk about soil profiles, because they're very different. The interesting thing about the Yakima Valley, well, all of Eastern Washington, is that the base soil profile on a macro level is pretty much the same. Pretty much we had on the state of Washington, there's basalt that came out of the lava flows that covered everything. And then as you get closer to the Cascades, farther to the west, there's more of that intermixing with basalt coming out of the ancient Cascades, which also included a little bit of ash in the soil profile. But it's pretty much basalt. And then after the hills got up thrust and the glacial Lake Missoula came through, it's pretty much less over basalt, depending on where you are, with Missoula flood siltation down at lower elevations. So the cool thing is, when you get down into the variations, there's so much variation on a micro to micro kind of level. And so if we go back to the picture of the vineyard, I have so much going on my screen, it's kind of crazy. So if you look at the hillside here, this is a basalt upthrust that doesn't have a lot of lusts. It's above the influence of the Missoula floods. So, but the ancient Columbia River used to flow over this part of the vineyard, which is where we get all of our heterogeneous rock that I have in this picture, conveniently right at hand. I don't know if you guys can see this. I'll go back to, so I can see myself. So this picture has different rocks from our vineyard. So the different, like these are river rocks. Obviously, the different colors are different mineral composites, different parts of the Canadian Rockies they came from. And then the Columbia River would flow and dry up and flow and dry up, which is why there's this white mineral crust on the rocks. So, and a lot of basalt. Sorry, Mom. But then you get down into this part of the vineyard, and this is totally different, where the carriage house comes from. There's a hydrology wedge of 40,000 acres in the hills above us that come down through this channel and come down through here. And it doesn't happen very often, but over the millennia, when we've had significant rain events, which can be half an hour, but it rains a lot, you get a lot of water coming out of these hills all through this one place. And it's brought fractured basalt from higher up in these hills, so more cobblestone type rocks, into this part of the vineyard. And so there's a little bit more soil down here. There's smaller rocks. We don't have that calcium carbonate component as evident in this part of the vineyard where the Carriage House is from. And it's really interesting to see the flavor component between the two wines. So Carriage House is always really fruity. It's bright. It's approachable. It's, it's a Cabernet-based, Merlot-based wine, so it's got the structure, it's got the tannin, but it's not. It's fun and it's elegant, and there's a reason Mom calls it the Everybody Loves Me wine, because it's
How can you not?
How can you not? Exactly. So that's kind of one of those distinctive things about Carriage House. And since we were talking about vintages, and June, you had a question about the vintages, they're the same rows in the vineyard every year. They're grown the same way every year, and they're made the same way every year. When we talked about the barrels last year and barrel choices, we're not making barrel choices for what barrels, on a micro level you are, but on a macro level, like what barrels you're going to buy, in a normal year, from a COVID standpoint, I would have already purchased all my barrels. So that's going to be the same year in and year out. What's different with the temperature profile is kind of how the vineyard's going to express itself in any given vintage. 13 and 14 were pretty similar vintages. They were both warm. And when you get warmer years, you get more fruit. And in cooler years, like the 10 and the 11, they're more savory, they're more elegant, they're more complex. On a macro level, if you think about it, Napa's warm and Bordeaux is cold. And Washington's in the middle. And the great thing about the nice thing about Napa is they get all that really great fruit, and they get a lot of structure, and they get just that wonderful ripeness. And you go to Bordeaux where it's cool, and you get great acidity and you get great complexity. And in the Yakima Valley, in the good sites, you get both, because it's warm enough to get the fruit development, but we have a much bigger diurnal temperature shift here than in either of those places. So we get the warm days like they do in Napa, but we get cool nights like they do in Bordeaux. So that keeps the acidity, that keeps the complexity, and yet you also get the fruit. So it's the big thing is, in a warmer year, we're going to trend more Napa, and in a cool year, we're going to trend more Bordeaux. So when I often talk about, it's a warm vintage, it's a warm climate, and people look at me like I've got three heads, but that's kind of how I think about what you get from the different growing conditions, and then how it translates into the wine. Are we getting most of our water from the Yakima Basin? We actually get our water from the Cascades. It all comes down through a series of canals from snowmelt. And how many years back did the Columbia River the Columbia River flowed through our vineyard, like before, a long time ago, before all the hills were up thrust, before the Missoula floods, because when all the hills came up, it diverted the course of the river. It's currently an hour to the east of us, because all the hills, when they came up, they pushed the river out of the way. So that was a long time ago.
Pliocene, I think I can remember that.
The Missoula floods were like the late Pleistocene, I think, which was a long time ago.
Yeah.
But I have a paper. I can send it to you. Remind me. I have all the geology papers. Because we've had geologists come through our vineyard, and they get so excited because we have cool rocks. So like I said, send me a note, remind me, I'll send you the paper. And do you recommend aging this wine? The nice thing about what we do is, because we don't release the wines too young, we're doing the 2014 for a reason, because these wines are intended to age, but we don't release them until they're kind of ready to drink. And so I think the 14's good. You could definitely decant it, but who did we have? Tony, were you drinking the 10? Who's drinking something older?
Jim,
Tony
13.
disappeared on us.
No, he's over there. He's back.
Tony, were you drinking the 10?
Yeah, I'm drinking the 10.
Would you like to comment on the 10?
It's absolutely fantastic. It's still subtle, but still fruit. And I can still see it holding for another 5 years. But I'm really glad I opened it today.
Perfect. And then Scott wants to know about the 9. The 9 was really good too. 9 was a warmer.
9 was a great year.
9 was the first year I was home, so one could posit it was the beginning of all the great vintages of Cote Bonneville. This is why else we have Dad muted. Oh my God, it's fantastic. No, 9 was a beautiful vintage. It was warm, but it wasn't super hot, and the wines have really great acidity, and they're delicious. So the 9.
I actually call it a warm year, but I don't recall that year being hot. Like when you think of 15 and 5, that to me is hot. I don't recall, but 9 they all say was a hot year. That's not hot, right, Marshall? Those of us who live here, that's not hot.
I know. I was thinking back too, but I didn't think 9 was that hot either. Really.
I didn't either. I always called it like the middle of the fairway, and then people say, "Oh, that was a hot year," and I'm going, "No, it wasn't hot. I remember hot."
Yeah. Yes.
What do you think, Jonathan? Is that okay?
I kind of middle of the fairway, I think.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Some of the recent years have been a lot warmer.
Yeah.
It was definitely hot in the Willamette in 09.
Yeah.
Oh, Aaron thinks I'm selling the wine short. Aaron, we should let Aaron talk about Carriage House. Where
did Aaron go?
Where did Aaron go? He's on. We have so many people. Aaron, where are you? 20, 30. Oh, okay.
I turned off the video because Milo is trying to snuggle and no one wants to see me snuggling. What I was going to say is, as one of the super awesome parts of my job is I do get to taste a lot of wines that get a lot of age to them. And I really honestly think that not just the big dog, not just the Cote Bonneville, but I think that Carriage House is wine that has 20-year possibility to it. And I don't think that that's any sort of stretch. I think that there's enough fruit in their youth, which is just saying in their youth is different than, right? Like Quilceda has already put out their 2017. So the 2011 is current vintage in market. Is that correct with Carriage House?
Yes.
I mean, so that's already.
Because if you're going to buy the glass and just pop the bottle and pour it in a glass, 2011 is about getting ready to do that.
It's drinking great right now, but that wine has the structure and the depth of flavor and the finish that suggests to me that that 2011 is still going to be great in 2031.
All right.
That's all I wanted to say.
And an empty.
Yours is gone.
Oh, just pull the cork out of it, Tony. It's okay. So, oh, great. If you guys look over in the chat, I assume everybody's looking in the chat. There's a co-posted a geology, a paper from Kevin Pogue, the geologist in Walla Walla. And Barb, what's your?
That's our geology. That was our geology page that has the Missoula floods and all of the cataclysmic events that created the geology in the Yakima Valley.
Oh, cool. And the more that you talk about the cataclysmic events that happened a lot of years ago, the more perspective we have for the cataclysmic event that's happening today. So that's the beauty of being in the vineyard right now, is that the world will go on. So, oh yeah, and his co says he did open the 2003 earlier this week and said it was fun. So we'll have to go back and look. I know we have at the tasting room. We have through back to 2011. I'll have to check if we have anything older stashed away in the library somewhere, but and that's another one. If you guys are interested in some of those older wines, shoot me an email and I will see. I'll make an extra point to go look and see what we've got and what I can find. So, because sometimes Dad hides wines for me and sometimes it's fun to find them and then they can get re-released and see the light of day. So that's a good thing. Nice. The 07. Kevin just opened the 7.
Oh, nice.
So.
Yeah, that was a really good vintage too.
Yep. All right, so I'm sure I missed some questions. What have we not answered? Dee, you asked about wildfires in recent years. Talk about research. We have done an amazing amount of work with WSU in the last few years because Tom, who is working on smoke impact research, was at Davis. Ironically enough, both when Co was at Davis a few years before me, and while I was at Davis, because he detoured through a lot of different things in getting his PhD, and then when he came up to WSU to teach, one of the things he was interested in, we both were in Napa in 2008 when they had a lot of forest fires, and so he's been very interested in research, in smoke research. So when we've had range fires, when we had the Okanagan Complex fire, we've had smoke monitors, like air quality monitors in the fruiting zone, in the vineyard, and we've really been able to proactively look at what's going on in our grapes, what's going to happen with the wines. And so, I mean, that's one of the things that we've done a lot of work with to make sure that especially when we release these wines, like the Coat and the Carriage House, that are intended to age, that they don't have, I shouldn't say any risk, but the risk of having any smoke influence is very, very low. Because the challenge with smoke compounds is that they show up over time. And so you might think the wine is fine, but then in the next month, 6 months, couple of years, that impact continues to get more and more significant. So if we tell you that you're going to have wines that you can lay down for 20, 30 years, they better not taste super smoky in 20 or 30 years. And especially because, Bill, as you're asking about barrels, one of the things, I don't remember the percent new in 14. I'm going to guess it's about 60% new. But none of our barrels are super, super toasted. They're all medium toast. We don't char the insides of any of them because we don't want that super charred flavor on the inside of the barrels. We want nice toasty vanilla caramely components, toasty oaky, but we don't want the that super char burnt toast flavors coming into the wines. So, Paul, I missed your question. I'm not trying to ignore you. So what other? Actually, before I get off of barrels, I was thinking about asking one of our coopers to come in and talk about barrels because you guys had so many questions on barrels last week. So if you like that idea, I will follow up with them and I will make them come in and tell us everything, answer all the questions, show the pictures, talk about the forest, talk about all that kind of stuff. So, cool. I will have to do that. Okay, Mom. I'm gonna go back and look for any questions that we missed.
Okay, so the mushrooms.
Yeah, we haven't eaten any mushrooms. I'm glad you guys like these.
Yeah, I hope you like them. So
Sure.
I do make
You should
these a
have
lot because we kind of like them and they're easy. But I think they go pretty well with the Carriage House. I think the earthiness is really nice. It's got a little bit of spice. A lot of things go with Carriage House. I always say it, everybody's buddy. How can you not like me? It's easy to pair this wine. So this one was pretty simple, honestly. But Like I say, it's kind of a go-to, simple, makes a nice side at dinner. It's also a good appetizer.
And they're so good for you.
Yeah, and they're vegetarians. And really vegetarians.
We enjoyed them, Kathy.
Do what?
I enjoyed them. This is Elise.
Oh, hi.
Elise, hi.
Hello. Also known as Celia Evans.
Well, good
to know.
You didn't know who that person was that was Zoom bombing your meeting tonight, did you?
No.
We'll see. That's why we'll just mute you again, so you can't cause any trouble. So, all right. So what other, I'm looking back to what else we missed. Oh, next week is the train station cab. So we are taking suggestions for appetizers on the train station, on the cab. So if you have any, think about it, shoot me a recipe, save mom from having to cook up again.
With all that chopping. With all that chopping.
Oh, that's why you have a Cuisinart. Just chops them really fast. Press the button.
All right, cool. Did I get all the wine questions? I feel like I missed some. Actually, I was going to ask Dennis. I'm unmuting you, Dennis. What is the oldest coat you've had, or carriage house you've had recently?
Oh, I was just looking to see what I had. Can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
I was just looking to see what I had in Cellar Tracker, and I've got 2005, but I think the most recent that I've had was 07, and it was drinking very nice. And I typed in earlier, I had an 03 coat with my neighbor Saturday.
Well, perfect. Good. Love that.
Love them all.
Blend percentages that Bill asked. So this is, it depends on the vintage because we go, because everything is based on designated rows, and it depends on how much fruit you get out of a row, in turn, then how much you can put into the wine. It's about 60% Cab, 35% Merlot, and 5% Cab Franc, but those change.
They can change.
They can change. It depends. I mean, there was 18, we decided it was 18, right? 18 that we had all the Franc? 18.
Yeah.
We should know this.
It blends together after a while.
Yeah. So in 19, we had about a third of the quantity of Cab Franc that we had in 2018, which is why in 18, we are coming up with that red Cabernet Franc under the train station label. But in 19, that's not going to happen. There will probably be about the same amount of Cab Franc in the overall blend. But before we had the train station label, what that would mean is, or if people weren't asking for red Cab Franc so much, that would mean that in 18, we would generally have a higher percentage of Cab Franc than we do in a normal year. Like 05, for example, was a bigger quantity year in some of our other varietals. So the percentage of Franc in 05 was lower than usual. I think it was only like 1 or 2%. So I don't think it's ever been lower than 05, and it's never been higher. I think the highest it's ever been is like 12. And so it just it depends on what the vineyard gives you.
Yeah, I think 2000, if I remember, 2003, you had it recently, there was one that was almost equally divided Cab and Merlot. There was one anomaly year.
Oh, you're talking about Coke?
No, I'm talking about Carriage House. But I think it was 2003, but I can't quite remember. But typically it's more Cab dominant, probably 2/3 Cab to 1/3 Merlot, in that range. And then
a little splash of Franc.
A little splash of Franc and brighten it, and just because it's yummy.
Mm-hmm. And then every year it spends, Dennis, 2 years in the barrel, all French oak. And now it's usually around 50-60% new, depending on the vintage. It used to be a little higher, but by backing off on the new oak, it showcases the fruit and puts the fruit more in evidence, which is, again, anybody can buy barrels, and they're a very important part of our program. But we really want to showcase the fruit that we have because it's so distinctive, because it's so unique. So, yeah. All right. Do we still have Dad? Did I lose him?
No, do you have to go up?
We might have lost Dad. Yeah, we lost Dad. But happens. All right, so Marshall and John, I'm gonna ask you guys what I'm gonna unmute the two of you, and what are you guys up to in the next couple weeks, in the next week or so in the vineyard?
Well, for us in the vineyard, yeah, we are just getting ready to start shoot thinning. So in the next couple weeks, we will hopefully be bringing back quite a few people. You know, we haven't had very many people working right now. Well, with everything that's going on, it's worked out somewhat well. We've kept our operators busy, just trying to try to keep them working in the vineyard. But we're starting to bring people back. Actually, tomorrow I'm bringing back a couple of crews, and then next week probably a couple more crews. So it's interesting when we bring the people back. We used to bring people to the vineyards in vans, but now we're having everyone bring their cars to the field. And luckily our rows are 7 feet apart, so we're actually social distancing out even in the vineyard. The rows are so, but we're really working hard to try to keep people apart from each other. But yeah, so shoot thinning is around the corner. I mean, the vines now, as they pop right now, they're really going to just, with this warm weather, start taking off. And we'll start next week, and we will be 2 weeks behind within 3 or 4 days, just because of how fast the vines will take off. So yeah. And we're in our production vineyards, we're actually starting our mechanical shoot thinning. So we won't use people, but we'll use equipment to shoot thin those vineyards that were mechanized. So.
All right. John?
Yeah, I think we're a little behind you, Marshall, but we're still fixing some of our irrigation systems, going through and just making sure there's no leaks, and coyotes haven't chewed through some lines or whatnot, so we're kind of patching them up as we go right now.
Are you planting?
Yeah, we'll start thinking about shoot thinning pretty soon, and that will kind of be the next stage. So.
Are you planting something, John, or am I confused?
Yeah, a few days ago we tried trying a new variety. Yeah, Touriga Nacional. We planted about an acre, and then some Viognier. We had made a big nursery last year, kind of replacing some Riesling that we pulled out. And anyway,
Riesling. We love
in about 3 years we got a good home for that.
So yeah, if you guys if you follow us on Instagram, if you're on Instagram, I would suggest Red Willow as well. They take awesome pictures, and they're in a gorgeous spot right up there by Mount Adams. So that's a fun follow on the grams. And then I got reminded that I have not yet talked about the 14 Carriage house. Whoops. So 14 was, like I said, it was a pretty warm vintage. So it's got that fruit. It's got those pretty stereotypical Carriage house characteristics. It's got that really distinctive cherry. I think, and I did not aerate or decant this, Micah. So I didn't do either one.
It wouldn't hurt it though.
It wouldn't. I would decant before I aerate. Aerate is like supercharging. You can give a lot of air to something really quickly, and so the more subtle way to do it is decanting. But I don't know, maybe that 17 Placida, you might want. That's got a.
How long?
I would put that one in the cellar.
How long should you decant before you drink?
Well, Mom and I opened the bottle about 20 minutes before we started. I just do this.
I can be that patient. I can make 20 minutes.
Then you give it some air, and I think especially with a younger vintage like this, it's fun to watch them evolve and change, because when you open it up, they're kind of closed. but you right off the bat, as soon as with the first cheers and the first sip, you get that DeBrule cherry. This has a lot of those darker cassis flavors, I think, this year in this vintage. It's got the savories, it's got the dried herbs, it's got all that, it's got the oak supporting. And so the other thing today that I'm pairing Carriage House with, it's always got those baking spices, and they're not necessarily evident
like this,
like without food, but I've been baking all day. I got a 25-pound bag of flour, and I'm bartering with baked goods today. So I made cinnamon rolls, and when the cinnamon rolls come out of the oven, that's when you want to pair them with Carriage House before the frosting, because there's always that real cinnamon, like allspice kind of baking spice element with this wine that pairs really well. I mean, it makes it such a great pairing for, like, normally I would think Syrah and eggplant would be a great pairing, but a lot of like eggplant parmesans and things like that have those earthy flavors with when you put the spice, when you put the brightness and the acidity, when you put the
like moussaka, which has some cinnamon, and those kinds of those dishes with Carriage House are phenomenal.
Because they bring out all those baking spices and complement the fruit and the acidity.
And the Indian food.
Oh yeah,
the chicken.
We're gonna so this is our new as of last harvest discovery. How good
we discovered a dish.
We discovered how well Indian food and Carriage House go together. So you want to give us when you can find chicken again, you can make chicken curry recipe.
Oh.
Or at least
I actually made a fish curry yesterday because I didn't have chicken because of, lack of availability in the stores these days. But I mean, it's still, I made it yesterday. I tried it today with the Carriage House. It was just as good. It was fantastic. It was really good.
Yeah, and last week, for those of you who were with us, I was making the tiki masala with the Carriage House. That was a winner. We'll do that again.
So. I'm gonna have the cinnamon rolls given away before tomorrow. See, that was my trade. I needed flour, so I said, if you give me the bag of flour, I will bake you cinnamon rolls. So I had one.
What's your address?
For quality control, but I'm giving the rest away. So, but yeah. So that's how I think about. I think the 14 Carriage House it's like all the Carriage Houses. It's got all those elements. It's got the balance. It's got, as Aaron brought up, it's got the finish. To me, this wine is, in a way, it's hard to pick out. All of our wines can be hard to pick out the elements because they're so well integrated. It's like, we don't have those wines that have one note, like just listening to the violin. You've got all the different elements. You really have the whole symphony that comes together, and all those different elements, but they're all in balance. So when you listen to the symphony, you don't hear one instrument the same way you hear the music. And Carriage House, and all the wines, but Carriage House has so many different elements going on with the different grapes, with the different all the different nuances that come from the different rows and the variation within those rows. And it's just, I think, like all of our wines, the really notable thing is year in and year out, you've got that elegance, you've got the refinement, you've got the balance. And I think those are the hallmarks of these wines more than any individual flavor note, aside from it. Tastes like Cab, tastes like Merlot, tastes like DeBrule. The cherry that comes out of DeBrule is different than the cherry that comes out of Red Willow. It's totally different than the fruit profile that comes off of Red Mountain. And that's why we vineyard designate things that come from all of these great vineyards, is because they are unique, they are different. We tasted one of Coe's vineyards recently from Elephant Mountain.
Yesterday.
Was that yesterday?
Recently.
Nobody knows what day it is right now. So yesterday, the interesting, I mean, it was just really, I know this, I've tasted these things before, but our vineyard is so cherry and Elephant Mountain is so purple. I mean, it's got those purple fruits and it tastes like the color purple to me. And they're so distinctively different. That's what makes wine so much fun. So, and that's why a lot of times I talk about whether it was a warm year or a cool year as opposed to the fruit flavors, because again, you're always going to have the violin, you're always going to have the timpanis, you're always going to have the oboe. It's just, who's turned up a little bit more, who's turned down a little more in what vintage and in what key are they playing are really more the vintage variations. But we're in the realm of Bach. We're not going from Bach to Shostakovich to somebody else. So it's, does that make sense? Is that long-winded enough for everybody? Or is she laughing at me? Looks like Ree's done laughing at me. That's good. Becky's always laughing at me. That's fair. So, and it looks like Dan's not laughing at me. I'm winning on that. I'm happy about that. So, all right. Anything else you guys want to know about these today? Any other questions for Marshall and John? I don't know if we're going to get them every week.
Well, they're going to be part of the vineyard series, though.
They're going to be part of the vineyard series.
So get a tune in for that. And what night are we doing that? Thursday?
Oh, she's muted. Hold on.
Hold on.
I can't unmute you.
Spacebar. There you go.
There you go.
We're gonna do the vineyard series on Thursdays.
Starting, we know.
Pardon me. Well, we're gonna we'll send out all the info tomorrow. I think we're gonna meet one last time tomorrow, and then we will announce it to the world.
Yeah, there we go.
Well, because we're gonna try to do the same thing where you've got a wine from, when we're talking about DeBrule, you have a wine from DeBrule, and we talk about Red Mountain and Shaw. We're going to talk about, our Quintessence will have wines from that vineyard, and we'll have a wine from Red Willow, and we want to make sure everybody can get the wine. So, because as you guys have pointed out, it's more fun to eat and drink together, the same thing.
And Marshall, you get to do the food pairing from your vineyard, and
Luckily, my wife is right here, and she can take over for that.
That's part of the package deal.
Okay. Sorry, Marshall, forgot to tell you that. Just came up.
So, all right, we will keep you posted on those because it'll be really interesting, and especially the more you guys want to hear about the vineyards, it's so, those guys don't make their own wines, so it's a real grower perspective that is you don't get very often if you don't live in the valley and hang out with growers. So hopefully we'll see you there, and
see you next week.
We'll see you next week with some Trade Station. So thanks everybody.
All right, thanks guys.
Bye.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That was fun.
Bye.